Good evening, all. It is 5 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. And so, without doubt, you know what we are here to do. For those of you who are joining us as usual or who will be seeing this in the recording, welcome. My name is Marjorie Wharton, and I am the host for LinkedIn Local Barbados. As always, it is my pleasure and privilege to be able to host this session and give the opportunity for one of the successful people amongst our community to share their experiences and their knowledge with us. And joining me this afternoon is Sonia Lane Gartside. Hi, Sonia.
Hi.
Hi. And we are going to be taking you through a discussion about refueling and re engaging. So, what does it take for you to be at optimum performance level? What do you have to consider when you are looking at anxiety situations that you may be confronting in your organization? What do you need to do differently? What are some of the strategies that you're going to have to take? Now, as you know, LinkedIn Local Barbados is a part of the LinkedIn Local Caribbean community. And our intention is really to bring together those of us who have met online and who want to be able to strengthen our connections, build our knowledge so that we can pursue our own success. And so it is my pleasure today to be able to have with us the author of the book, Workplace Anxiety. And as I always start these sessions, Sonia, I am going to ask you the same thing I ask everyone else to just tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, thanks for having me, Marjorie. It's great to be here and to talk to the Caribbean about myself and my book. As you indicated, I'm Sonia Lingartside, and I am a master trainer, instructional designer. I am a change manager. I am an executive coach, and I am an author. And the one thing that's linking them all is that I deal with people. How do
Okay.
I help people to develop? How do I help them to activate their best selves? And primarily, the way I do that is I work with leaders who are trying to accomplish a particular goal, and help them to determine what's the best way to get the productivity of the people and the systems that they work in. So I'm all about people, growth, development, and enabling and empowering them to act. So that's who I
Okay.
am.
All right. Well, glad to hear that. That's in a nutshell. It's a lot. But I would imagine that you didn't start there. So I always like to invite people to tell us a little bit about the journey that they took. So you were born in Barbados, but you now live somewhere else.
Yes, I live in the States now. I was born in Barbados, and my journey of developing and helping people and engaging in leadership development and managing change started there. And then
Mhm.
about 12 years ago, I got married.
Okay.
And in getting married, that's where I was introduced to uncertainty, discomfort, learning how to move through fear and coming out on the other side, because I got married and I left what was a very successful career in Barbados. I was a research director at the School of Business. My family was there, my friends was there. I had a life there, and I moved with my husband to a country where I only knew one person, my new
Mhm.
husband.
Mm.
And that is where actually one of the important events in my life that allowed me to get really really comfortable with change, even though I don't like it. So I had to start over from scratch. I had to
Mhm.
learn how to pivot, how to change, and how to build my life all over again
Okay.
without the benefit of the network that I had created before.
Okay. And so what, if anything, may have prepared you to be able to do that?
I think that figuring out how to approach it
Mm.
really helped me. And I always tell the story 12 years, when my then fiance and we were driving around New Zealand, exploring New Zealand. And I was contemplating, okay, do I move through this discomfort? Do I bet on myself? Do I bet on my potential? I think this could be a great relationship. This can really benefit my life, but it would mean a lot of discomfort for me. And as we were driving along, I came to a bridge where you can bungee jump off the bridge. And I decided,
Mhm.
hey, bungee jumping is just exactly what I'm about to do. And so I did it. And I realized three, key things: that you can move through discomfort, you can move through fear. And as long as you focus on the future and as long as you learn that you can bet on yourself and you can bet on where you're about to go, then life will be okay. And I thought that that physical act really helped crystallize all the intellectual things I knew about change.
Mm.
And applying it in my personal life really helped me to understand it fundamentally. And really, when I went back to work and when I went to, as a change manager, it really helped me to understand people more and utilize that to help them to change and embrace change.
Okay. So I have to say this because you have to say in the interest of disclosure. Now you and I have known each other for years and years. And so I did
Yes.
in fact know you when you were posting those pictures of you jumping off a bridge bungee jumping. And all of us who knew you thought you were crazy. Because it's like, what is she doing? Jumping, risking her life. And we all thought it was really hilarious that you thought this was perfectly normal to launch yourself these thousands of feet off a bridge with nothing holding you up except one tiny little rope that is supposed to hold you and help pull you back. So,
Yes.
what I would ask you is this: would you what is it about you as a person you think that gave you the kind of interest in doing something so daring? Because not everybody is going to take that as an option. No
Yes.
matter how good a metaphor is for change, there are a lot of people who will see that and just see the fear and back away.
And back away. And
Mhm.
the first part of my book, in terms of dealing with workplace anxiety and stress and fear,
Mhm.
is called Harness Your Anxiety.
Mm.
And these are the things that I really figured out just jumping off a bridge with just a piece of rope holding me. And it really, and that's the part that I figured out, that there's a process. And first of all, the first step of that harnessing of your anxiety is to realize that fear is normal, doubt is normal, uncertainty is normal. And
Mhm.
that your job isn't to stop feeling that, is to recognize that that's completely and utterly normal and move through it. The second thing
Mhm.
I recognize is that you have to learn and unlearn things
Mhm.
in order to move through. I was really good at learning. I wasn't so good at unlearning. And one of the things I
Mm.
had to unlearn was that mindset, in harnessing your anxiety, that just because you're fearful, just because there's uncertainty, just because you doubt yourself, doesn't mean that you can't get something done. And so I had to unlearn that fear meant stop, or that uncertainty meant stop, or if I doubted myself, it meant stop. What I had to learn was that I just needed to know how to move through the discomfort, and that there's a difference between discomfort and trauma. And once you recognize that, okay, is this discomfort or am I being traumatized? If it's not, you're not being traumatized, this is just discomfort, you can get through it. And so that saying that, we were raised with, is that you can do hard things.
Mm.
Bungee jumping taught me that I can do hard things. I can move through fear. I can
Mm.
move through discomfort. I can move through that feeling of I don't know where to go next and get to the other side, as long as I follow the process which I outline in my book.
Okay. Now hindsight is 2020. So for a
Mhm.
lot of us, we will see that you have gone through that and we will say, well, sure, she could figure that out. But for a lot more people, they really see it as something that
Mhm.
holds them back. Now, I know in your book you've taken the opportunity to outline a process that people can follow. But the fact
Mhm.
is that for a lot of people, they just stumble over the fear.
Yes.
Okay.
They stumble through it.
Yeah. And there's somebody online because we have a few people joining us and they're saying that they're really admiring that quote you said, move through the discomfort, just move through it, acknowledge and accept that it is going to be there.
Mhm.
So you describe yourself as having left Barbados and having gone to a new country, knowing only
Mhm.
one person.
Yes.
You had you had a successful career here, and you basically in your life, as you had done with the bungee jumping, jumped off a bridge and went off to do something else. What
Mhm.
are some of the lessons that you gained while you were going through that process that perhaps informed what you wanted to share with us all as you were writing your book?
Yeah, and I think the biggest lesson was my mindset, the harnessing of that anxiety to
Mm-hmm.
productively utilize what you're feeling, to accept it as normal, harness it. And I always say to people that first of all, accept that that's the feeling, and there's nothing wrong with the feeling. Don't try to resist it. Embrace it and move through it. And the second thing that
Okay.
you have to understand, in order to do that, you have to change. And to change, you have to learn and you have to unlearn. You have to be constantly learning and unlearning. So no
Mm-hmm.
matter what you're doing in your job, whatever your job description is, it really is. You have one job: how to learn and unlearn to benefit the organization. Your job is change. It is
Mm-hmm.
adapting and preparing for change. So that's one of the mindset. The third thing I had to realize was that I am not important to organization. It's my output that's important. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm someplace where no one knows who I am, and I'm being asked to prove that I can
Mm-hmm.
do basic things. You know, like it's equivalent to you're accustomed to flying a 747, and you walk into an organization and they're asking you to prove that you can ride a bicycle, and you're thinking, what? I mean, do you know who I am? No, you don't, because you're only interested in what value do I bring to you, and can you demonstrate that you have that output. So I had to learn that mindset switch, that I am not important. Is my productivity, is my output that's important. And that's something that I think a lot of people need to understand within organizations. Your career is 100% owned by you.
Okay.
Maybe enabled or assisted by the organization, but you are it's entirely employee owned, and that's a good thing. It means that you are in control, and you get to focus on where do you want to go, what do you want to do. And then the fourth thing that helped me to do it, which is what I tell everyone when I'm coaching, is that you've got to bet on yourself. You got
Mm.
to bet on your potential. Your
Okay.
potential is so untapped in terms of people understanding that you can learn, you can unlearn, you can adapt, but you've got to bet on it, and you've got to bet on yourself. Even when you feel doubt, even when you feel like, I don't know what I'm doing, bet on yourself. And that's something that I had to make a conscious mindset change. When you change your mind and your mindset, you can accomplish anything because you have the right approach to tackle difficulties and discomfort. And so that's the first step that I had to go through. And you tell people this, as you say, intellectually, you teach it in change management, you say it, but when you do have to do it for yourself, it
Yeah.
really resonates, and you really sink in and say, yes, this
Yeah.
does work.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that because I can remember myself having to face things where when it's happening to you, you finally have to say to yourself, wait a minute, hang on. I've been telling people this for 10 years, so I have to do it. It's like I remember facing a situation where I'm going through, and it's like there's all this burden coming to you. And I'm always telling people, look for the lesson, and all
Mhm.
these challenges are coming my way. And one day I had to say, maybe there's a lesson here you need to look for. So you have to coach yourself too. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that and for referencing that point. So I want to dig in a little bit to what you were saying about these points. So I just made a note of them as you were talking. You talk especially about the learning and unlearning. What does it take to learn and unlearn? Because a lot of us, sometimes we don't even know that we've learned the things that we've learned.
Yes.
And we don't even realize that there are habits that are constant that we're engaging in that are being
Mhm.
driven by something that's in us. We just assume it's natural, it's who we are. So,
Yeah.
what does it really take for someone to unlearn some of those behaviors they have?
And that's where we move into section two of the book, where we talk about unleashing your powers, and where
Mm,
I say everything that is in you,
mm,
wake it up. There is so much potential that you have that's just sleeping. You've got to wake it up. And one of the things that I put forward is, how do you do a personal development plan? So your main job is change, and when you get that queasy feeling in your stomach, like, I'm unsure, I really don't know, it's
mhm,
often a sign that you need to unlearn something, because that is
mm,
what is that belief, that feeling, that habit is what is holding you back. And so in
mhm,
the personal development plan, within that chapter, we'll say it here, and it's very easy. It's not anything complicated like you're doing it for an organization. Everything in the book is how to, and very basic as to how you can do it, is to really sit down and say, what do I need to learn? What hopes and fears do I have? And right there in your fears is what you may need to unlearn. Dive into that, excavate it. What am I fearful of? And then see, are there beliefs that I hold unconsciously that are holding me back? You know, there are people who know they need to leave a job. It's not benefiting them, it's not profiting them. They're just stuck there. And they know that they need to leave, but the belief that's holding them there is that I'm comfortable. The
Mm.
belief that's holding them there is to deny the fear. I am fearful of what is going to happen. And so, one of the things that you want to do is just excavate it and figure out what is holding you back. And maybe that's something that you need to unlearn. It's like,
Okay.
and we do this all the time in our lives. I remember growing up, anyone with if I wanted a tattoo, my mother said, "Oh, no, 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 you can't have tattoos," you know, and that is something that I had to unlearn. So we have to unlearn things in our personal lives, and we have to unlearn things when we are looking at our careers as well, because they hold you back. And so excavating your fears is what helps you to know what you need to unlearn, and then
Mhm.
you then have to work to figure out how do I unlearn it.
Okay. Well, I was kind of still at. I hear you say look for your fears,
Hmm.
but is it an easy task to really excavate what is driving that fear? And so I'm really asking that question because I guess I'm saying if you were talking to one of your clients, so if you're talking
Hmm.
to someone now, let's say, who's hearing you, and they agree, they understand the need to excavate the fear,
Hmm.
what are some of the things that they can do that would help them really do that?
Well, the first thing that we will do, if particularly, and this usually comes with coaching, because coaching, you know, you have in the books, you have all the stats, but we're personal.
Mhm.
You have to customize it. As you say, I want to jump off a bridge. My husband, who does mount, you know, who goes mountain climbing, I'm afraid of heights. He's not afraid of heights, and yet
Yeah.
he's looking at me and saying, "How could you ever?" You see, we're
Yeah.
different. We're completely different. And so what's the thing when I'm coaching is I work with people to figure out, well, what are your fears, what are your hopes, what are your dreams, and what are your fears, and then we
Mhm.
look at your fears and then figure out gently, how could those be holding you back? How are
Okay.
they profiting you actually right now by holding on to the fear? Because sometimes we hold on to things because it makes us feel temporarily better. We
Mhm.
know we're supposed to exercise. We know we're supposed to go to sleep early to get enough hours to fuel our dreams. But we come home and we binge watch TV until 2 a.m. So what's
Because
driving?
it's easy. Because it's easy.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a temporary comfort. What I like to call, instead of you don't self care, you self soothe. You
Okay.
soothe yourself. And so soothing is okay in the short term, but if you do it for too long, you start to deny and you start to have negative effects. That's when you start to overeat. That's when you start to overshop. That's when you start to, you know, do things that are not profiting you. And so
Okay.
what we discover is it something that is soothing you? And if it is, what healthy habit or healthy outlook or healthy behavior can we replace it with that will give you the same effect?
Okay.
Yeah, because
Oh.
sometimes people use it as a crutch, and you don't want to pull the crutch away,
Yeah.
and then they keel over. You have to gently help people to to work towards it.
Okay. All right. So that makes sense. So you've done that now. You've excavated. You've identified what your fear is, and perhaps you started to put in place some steps for moving forward.
Hmm.
All right. What then does it take to keep you going down that path?
Wow. So when you're unleashing your fears and you're unleashing your powers and your skills and you're waking up everything and you've done that, you want to ensure that you're looking at certain skills. So for example, negotiating. Lots of women, you don't get what you deserve in life. You get what you negotiate. So there's certain skill sets, running supplemental skill sets that will help you in terms of unleashing your skills. You
Mhm.
want to be able to listen better because listening communication is such a difficult thing and causes so much confusion and so much stress and anxiety in work that if you are not a good listener, you are creating problems for yourself. So you want to be a good listener. So there's some several skill sets that before we move out of, so you have your mindset, now you're developing your skill sets. There's certain skill sets that I'm saying are essential that you must take
Okay.
with you in order to move forward. Learning how to thrive in a bureaucracy, where you sometimes feel because in a bureaucratic situation, in organization, in a matrix organization, a lot of things are companies tend to focus a lot on control. So sometimes anxiety is caused when you feel that you don't have any agency or any influence to get things done. So you have to learn how to thrive in the bureaucracy. Those are the types of things the skills that you want to take with you to unleash your powers.
Okay.
And then once you've done that, then we will move on to the third and final individual process, which is to roll. I have a quote in the book that says, "Did you think the lion was sleeping because he didn't roar?" A lot of people have a roar and they don't do it. They are sleeping. So we want you to wake up and we want you to utilize your mindset, utilize your skill set, and go forward. And so that section of the book deals with if you're not demonstrating value to the organization, if you're not getting your goal, if you're not demonstrating value to yourself, and that means you have certain goals and you're not getting them,
Mm-hmm.
you're not demonstrating value to yourself, here's what might be holding you back. And so that's the part that I deal with. It could be your health habits don't support your goals. Just as I mentioned before, we
Mm-hmm.
know that you're an Olympic athlete. You have to
Mm-hmm.
take care of yourself. You have to have an energy audit. You have to ensure that you're fueling your body correctly. And a lot of people are just driving their cars on an empty tank.
Mm-hmm.
And so that might be holding you back. Another thing that might be holding you back is that you're not utilizing your time effectively. You don't know how to prioritize, or what I like to call ruthlessly prioritize. Because as a leader, there are certain things that
Mm-hmm.
you and only you can do. And those are the things that you need to do first. So people are overwhelmed. People feel like, that queasy feeling, I'm not getting everything done. And when you excavate, it's because the things that only you can do, you are not doing because you're over there doing somebody else's job, or you're not delegating, or you're not collaborating. And so those are the things that I focus on in the book of these are the steps that you need to figure out. And then ensure that you're not just busy, but you're productive. So learn how to execute better. And so that's the third thing, the rowing, ensuring that you're engaging in behaviors
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, get you where you need to go.
Okay, and which contributes, as you said, because one of the key things to dealing with uncertainty is make sure that you realize that it's not just about you, but it's about your productivity. So it's about your output. That's what's used to judge you. So
That is exactly.
so one of the things I heard you say, or I noticed, is that you mentioned a quotation that's
Mhm.
actually in your book, and you have six very powerful quotations that are
Yeah.
in your book.
Mhm.
Which, of course, we can encourage everyone to go access the book on
Oh,
Amazon.
yeah.
But I think that what you mentioned there, and the fact that you've used quotation, is really something that resonates with the people.
Mhm.
So tell me, what as an author, what made you decide to have this kind of approach? So using things like quotations,
Mhm.
using three key points, making sure that you
Mhm.
have specifics that people can follow in order to go through it. What made you believe that that was the way you should structure this piece of information and learning for the public?
Yeah, that's a great question. I read a lot. I mean, if you go into my office, there are books everywhere. Um,
Yes.
you know,
Yes. Yeah. Everybody who's known you over the years knows that we can, if we miss you anytime, we just have to look somewhere where there's a bookstore, or you reading in a Kindle or a book or a magazine.
Yeah, so I'm a big reader. And one of the things what I do is I read, especially non fiction books, business books, is that I read, and as I read, I crazy. So I underline and I go, and then by the time I get to the end of the book, everything that I have underlined is the actual book. Everything
Mm,
else is fluff that they've just padded in. And so
mm,
at the end, I then have to start from the beginning and just read what I have underlined, because that is the meat. That is what is really helpful. That is the how-to that you can apply. So when I was writing this book, that was my goal. I don't want any fluff. I just want simple, straightforward steps that you can break down, that you can utilize. So first of all, I have to take any complex topic, any complex area, and break it down so it's simple, so that when you read it, you get it. When I say what a bottleneck is, you understand what that is and how to avoid it. And so that's the approach that I took with this book, which is these are easy how-to steps, the process of what you need to apply, what you need to focus your time on. And it doesn't contain anything that is fluff or anything that is nice to know or will be great to have, because a lot of what we're talking about cannot be prescriptive. You know, we are individuals, and I deal a lot. Everything in my job and my life is to deal with helping people get better. And if there's one thing I know, is that regardless of which country I am, you really need to customize a solution to the individual. So some people can, well, as my, you know, my husband will, he's not afraid of heights. I am. I understand that research shows that he and I are having the same feeling. But what I label fear, he labels excitement. And so we are different, and I have to customize it to you. So this book is the how-to steps, and it's something that you can then take, focus on, and customize for you and your life.
Okay, without the fluff. So you have specifics, you have guidelines on what you can do and how you can apply it in life and in work.
Mhm. And I love words. So there are quotations all over the book because I am a lover of words.
Yes, and quotations are a way to get us excited, and it's part of our storytelling tradition and so on from the Caribbean. But in a more succinct way rather than the fluffier
Mhm.
version as you
Yeah.
described it.
I'm
Now,
not a fluffy person, sorry.
one other thing that certainly I noticed is that you tended to have reference to things that happened in your own life.
Hmm.
You seem to draw upon experiences you had, whether it was the bungee jumping, you may have been talking about your experiences with bureaucracy or in organizations. Now,
Hmm.
you know, there is a saying for most authors, their first book is autobiographical. So tell us, have you how have you lived what you are now teaching? Or is that an accurate assumption that you've lived some of these things that you are now teaching?
Yes. So the book is written from that perspective of I have made a lot of these mistakes.
Mm,
And these are the lessons that I have learned. And then as I do lots of consulting, you know, where you jump into an organization and you have to pick up the culture really quickly, and you have to pick up what's happening. And that's when you realize that it doesn't matter where you are in the world. And I'm someone that loves to travel. I mean,
mm,
you know, I've been to 30 countries, and people generally are the same. They have the same issues, just in their own particular way. And the lessons I've learned in my life, and the lessons that I've learned while consulting, and indicating this is what works. I know this is what works because I have applied it, and I have seen other people apply it and it works, or I have seen other people know what to apply and then don't,
mm.
and how that has
And
worked
the
out.
consequences of that.
Yes, because you know, as a consultant, you're
Mm,
there to just advise.
mhm.
And so that doesn't mean that people are going to have to take your advice.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
they're continue or their way. Some people do, some people don't. And when they do, and when you work with a leader to accomplish your goals, and they do the work, and they are really into the process, it's so
Mhm.
rewarding to see it win, because you can't, as a consultant or as a person, you can only share your experiences, but the real work and the real success lies with the person who you are assisting.
Of course.
So what I do is I help people activate their best selves, but I don't make them activate their best selves. I help
Mhm.
them to do it.
Yeah.
And these are the tools, as simplified as they can be, that if you utilize them and if you work at it, you will succeed. And
Yeah.
again, it goes right back to that mindset that it doesn't always have to feel comfortable. One of the quotes in the book is that growth starts when you're successful. It doesn't end when you're successful. That's when it starts.
Yeah.
When you've ascended to the top and you realize I'm a leader, and that's the last section of the book, which is about how do you lead. Now that I've taken care of myself, how do I lead an organization, or how do I lead a company? These are the things that I've seen, and I know that actually works.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right there that growth doesn't start just because you've now reached that place. That's where the journey now begins.
Hmm.
And there's that old saying I like to say to people all the time that growth comes from the struggle.
Yes, the
So
struggle is so important.
yeah, if you're not having that struggle, then you're not going to get the growth. And know that if you're looking for growth, that you're likely going to wind up in situations that you have to struggle. And of course, then there's that old Bajan saying that you can lead people to water, but you can't make them drink.
Although I
So
try very hard to be motivational and inspiring and figure out who the person is. And
yeah,
what I have found is that people know what the issue is. We are inherently wise, capable, and strong. We know the answers to our issues. We know what to do. Sometimes all we need is some person to say, bet on yourself. You can do, you are enough. You don't
yeah.
need to be smarter, bigger, thinner, nicer. All you need to do is just believe in yourself and bet on yourself.
Which is a nice segue because that was really where I was heading next, because that was one of the things that you mentioned as a strategy to be pursued, bet on yourself. So I wanted you to talk about that a little more. When you're telling people that we need to bet on ourselves, what exactly does that mean? Because there are a lot of people who will say, well, I believe in myself. I know that I am capable. You're not necessarily seeing it in their actions, but that's what they will say.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you should be doing to really put into action that bet on yourself?
Well, that's it. Just act it. So you've developed a plan of what to do it. All those things you said you were going to do, just do them.
Hmm.
Go out there and do them. And when you're talking to people, they have an idea of what to do. They know what the steps are, but they're scared.
Hmm.
You're scared. So when I first moved here and I don't know anyone and I'm able to work and I don't have a network to call on, in where I come from, that's how you get a job. You tell everybody I'm looking.
Yeah.
And someone helps you. And what happens when you don't have a network? Well, what does that mean? It means that I have to reach out to people I don't know. And
Hmm.
as Bajans, we don't like that.
Yeah.
It's not something we do.
Yeah.
And it's something I had to unlearn, that it's quite okay to reach out to some person who I looked at and I think they have knowledge that I would hope they would share with me. And even
Hmm.
though I don't know them and they don't know me, I'm going to
Hmm.
send them a message and ask them if I can have coffee with them to talk about this issue and talk about this area. And I had to unlearn not to do that, and so I did it, even though it might be, whew, you're afraid, you're uncertain, you're doing something that you've never done before. You have to bet on yourself, and betting on yourself is, I am going to do this even though I am scared, even though I am afraid, because I know this will benefit me. And one of the things I like to say to people that profits you is, think of your future self.
Mm.
Don't think of the discomfort now. Imagine what your future self. I went to a conference once where a doctor says, stop being a jerk to your future self. you know, the body that you're in now, take care of it, because when you're 60, the current body, you're going to believe in it. So that's why I think of your future self and then bet on that person. What would it be? And that's what motivates me to do something that I'm afraid. First of all, I have to acknowledge I'm afraid, because oftentimes we don't acknowledge we're afraid. We have
Hmm.
excuses. We say, well, people don't like to reach out, people don't
Yeah.
answer back, people don't, you have to first get to the point where you say, actually, I am scared. This is outside of my comfort zone, and I don't know how to do this, and I'm not enjoying it. And then
Hmm.
once you're realizing, well, that's quite normal. You're reaching out to people, then you have a perspective of, you can only try. I'm going to bet on me.
Yeah.
If this was an organization, I would have done it. So I am going to bet on me and I'm going to reach out. And then what you find, I say in the book, there is beauty in the pivot.
Hmm.
There are open spaces out there that you never discovered until you bet on yourself and just step off. And I know I use that bungee jumping, but it's so resonant for me. When you first start a bungee jump, when you jump, you're so scared and you have to move through the fear. And like about 3 years ago, I went back to New Zealand and I jumped off. I did another bungee jump off the tallest man-made structure in the Northern Hemisphere.
Hmm.
And I was so scared. I kept telling myself, this is an adventure, Sonia. And as I was waiting to go out onto that platform, there was another tourist there. She's from China, and she spoke Chinese to me. I don't know Chinese, but I responded, I know, I am so scared. And we held hands. We don't know. We don't even
Fear
speak the same
transcends
language.
words.
But we reached out and bonded over how scared we were. And
Mhm.
that's why you bet on yourself. You're scared, reach out, ask for help
Mhm.
because someone will respond to you. Someone who you don't know will respond and help you. Despite the world that we're living in and
Mhm.
how it may appear, strangers are very kind.
Mm.
I have moved forward on the kindness of strangers, people who I don't know have reached out and helped me. And so you have to bet on that. That's who you
Yeah.
are, that's your potential, and you have to step out on that faith.
I
And so
like that. I like that perspective that you're saying about that. That there's kindness out there in the world, because I think part of a lot of the fear that we have comes
mhm,
from the point of view that we are almost second guessing what the other person will think
mhm,
and how they will
yeah,
perceive our actions, and so that is what directs our behavior. So if we could make that change and recognize that there are sometimes people out there who are open and willing to give you a chance, even if you're failing, that they will
mhm.
allow you to learn from the failure, I think is a good mindset shift for us to have.
And you have to actualize it. So, in other words, you have to act on it for it to come through. And that's why I
Yeah.
said bet on yourself, do it. And you may get rejected. Last year, my husband was in Spain or wherever, and I was driving the car. And you may know that I don't really pay attention to the car, except how to turn it on and how to drive safely. I might be the only person in the world, at least that's what my husband said, that actually stops at stop sign. I mean, a complete stop.
Yeah.
And I do that. And the car and the car tire was flat, and I didn't know because I just drive and it feel funny and scared, and I pulled in, and the amount of, and I'm like, who am I going to talk to? Who do I call that now? And so many strangers, stop to help me. It's
Yeah.
crazy, and I am I. And there were a few that didn't, that I asked for
Mhm.
help, and they weren't very helpful. But if I let that stop me, I would have met all the three wonderful people who went
Yeah.
above beyond call to really help me and made me feel like, oh, this is such a good community. This is such a good environment that I met these people. So you have to just get out there and you have to act it out and not be fearful of it. You will meet those people, but
Mhm.
you get better as you go on in letting them, slide off, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, two questions popped to mind for me as you were saying that. One about failure. Now, you talk a lot in the book about failure and dealing with failure and that
Mhm,
fear of failure and what happens
mhm,
if you change the way that you look at failure. So, what you've described there to me, I think, stems a little bit from the fact, what you were just talking about, stems from the
mhm.
fact that we have this fear that we will encounter a situation we cannot succeed in. And so
Yeah.
we are reluctant to take action. Talk a little bit about your perspective on failure and what you think our perspective should be, and maybe what you've described in the book or said in the book about it.
Yeah. So one of the things I think we're socialized very early to understand is that to avoid failure.
Yeah.
And I am a control freak, and I always believe, if I can just have everything planned and organized, there will be no failure because my aim is to avoid it. And one of the quotes in the book is where you can do every single thing right and still fail. I
Yeah.
mean, can you believe that? It's like I had to learn
Yeah.
that lesson. You can do
Yes.
every single thing right and fair, and that's because we're taught to fear failure. We feel embarrassed, and we feel ashamed, and people don't, and that's because people don't share their failures. All you see is the success stories, and we are
Yeah.
such a we compare a lot, and that's why I say don't compare because you don't know what people are hiding. When I was growing up, my mother would always say, when I say, "Oh, but X has this," and she will always say to me, "You don't know what X is doing when you're sleeping, so don't be don't be telling me about that." And that is true. You don't see other
Mhm.
people's failures, and so you see failure as something to be ashamed of. And what I
Yeah.
see in the book is that you learn from failure. That's
Of
it.
course.
You gotta fail faster. Don't draw it out.
Mhm.
Don't think that if you spend enough time and if you process it enough, then you won't fail. And that's the hardest thing to understand, particularly if you're an entrepreneur, that it's about that you don't get it right the first time.
Yeah.
And it's difficult if you're like me, you're a perfectionist or you're a control freak, where you're trying to control everything, and that's what bungee jumping taught me too. Because the first time you jump off, you're being thrown off a tall building, and you literally try to control it, and then have like 2 seconds, and you realize, wait, hold on a minute, I can't control this, and you
Yeah.
let go, and that's where and I don't mean to be all Bruce Lee, like you're water, be water, my friend, but that's the key, the key thing is that you can't control it, and you have to be fluid, you have to be flexible, and you have
Yeah.
to ride it and understand that you will fail. You cannot avoid it. And what do you do when you fail? You're
Yeah.
going to feel bad. Accept that. But you have to change your mindset to, what can I learn from this?
Yeah.
What has it
Absolutely.
taught me? And
Yeah.
once you do that, and then you start to read some autobiographies and realize that, hey, wait, they paint you as the most successful person ever. And then when I read from page 1 to 1,000, it's nothing but failures. Where was this in yours? That's not highlighted in your story. And that's something that you have to understand. And I think I learned that early because I read a lot. There was a period in my youth when I read lots of autobiographies, um, and Mother Teresa, when it comes, and lots of different people, and they tell you the success, but they don't tell you that it took 40 years to accomplish
Yeah.
something. They don't tell you it took how many years for Gandhi to win freedom for India, and then immediately after he won their freedom, they split into India and Pakistan, and he went on a hunger strike because that was so disappointing to him. We don't tell people
Mhm.
how people fail and how they learn from it, and so that's
Yeah.
something in the
And
book.
so we often wind up comparing our process to people's end result. And so we don't realize that they may have gone through the same process that we've gone through. So that's a very good story that you have outlined there.
Thank you. And it's what I say to people, and I like to say this to my coaching clients: document your successes.
Hmm.
And I say that because when you go into, especially the row part, did you think the lion was sleeping because he did not roar? People think you're sleeping because you're not roaring. And one of the
Hmm.
things is the messy middle. And that's like the most, like, if you look at my website, that's the biggest thing that drives people to my website is, how do you deal with the messy middle? You're building a house, and there's a period when you walk in, you can't tell if they're destroying the house or they're constructing something new,
Yeah.
and you don't know, and so you're lost, particularly at a point in your life. There are people out there who don't have any options, and then there's a point in your life where the path before you have become muddied with options. There's so many that you don't know where to go, and how do you do it? And one of the things I say to people is, there's a reason why people document their successes,
Hmm.
because it also gives you some self-confidence. It also helps you to bet on yourself more. So instead of, at the end of the week, not only documenting, when you're reflecting as a leader and you go into the leadership part and we talk
Hmm.
about what do you need to do as a leader, you need to reflect on what happened, what could I have done better, so you can do it better. You learn from your failures. Also list your successes,
Yeah.
because they look better written down. They
Yeah.
look better in print.
And that's a challenge, I think, a lot, especially in the Caribbean too. We hear that you shouldn't talk about when you're successful because you're boasting and you're bragging. And we are perhaps forgetting that important point you're saying there. If you're not showing to people your output, as you mentioned
Mhm.
earlier, as something that is used to track and determine if you're being productive, if you're not showing people your output, then they don't know. And there are a lot of people, I agree with you too, when I'm coaching people and in leadership programs, where people are saying that their managers should know what they have done, or they're
Yeah.
saying that managers should see how hard they work, and it's not
Mhm.
that simple. And I think that's a good thing that you've mentioned in your book. If you see yourself as taking responsibility for your career, then you begin to realize that it's important for you to document and for you to publicize and for you to promote your successes when they occur. Now, one thing I want to ask
100%.
you, especially kind of jumping off from that point, is there a gender element in the ability to do that? Because there's a lot of talk out there about whether or not women are more reluctant to talk about their successes, and
Mhm.
there's all that talk about that imposter syndrome that is
Mhm.
also often seen. So, what could you tell us about that gender element when it comes to that willingness to talk about, shout about, or roar, as you call it in the book?
Yeah. It's 100% gender. We are socialized from our childhood not to brag. You know, research shows that one of the first things a child learns is not how not to avoid embarrassment, which is why we hate failure, because immediately a child doesn't even need to be able to speak, and they're able to understand, I want to avoid embarrassment. And another thing is, from women, we're socialized to be, you know, nice and soft. And there is a gender issue. I've written an article about that, gender in the workplace, and the research always shows it. The research shows
Yeah.
that, number one, women are given less positions of power. When women assume positions of power, they're not given the support that they're needed. It also shows that women suffer a double bind. If they don't speak up, they're saying that you know, if you lean in, I know a lot of people say lean in, but women lean in, and they're often accused of being aggressive, and they're penalized for it. And if you are an intersectionality, so if you're black and you're a woman, there's a whole lot of things. So there's systemic barriers that are in place when you go into the workplace if you are a woman. I
Okay.
want to speak to the men, because are the men are needed to step up, and men are willing to step up. You just have to ask them to step up and to
Yeah.
sponsor people and to mentor people and to speak out. And when I say sponsor, to say, hey, could we give this person an idea? And research shows that when men do that, it helps tremendously. In fact, it's the only thing right now that actually works. But for women, we have to recognize, first of all, that it exists. You can't
Mhm.
confront anything you don't, you know,
Yeah.
understand. And the second thing we have to do is to recognize that you don't sit and wait for someone to give you anything. You are 100% in control. You have got to understand, which is why the harness your anxiety part is so important. The research backs that up. Is that you have got to understand that even though you feel insecure, you feel uncertain, you feel like everyone can tell I don't know what I am doing. Spoiler
Mhm.
alert, not many people know what they're doing. Even the doctor you go to, I sometimes have to say, actually, here's my position. And they will say, oh, yeah, actually, yeah. And I'm thinking, okay, you and I are in this together, rather than, you know, and no one knows exactly what they're doing. So you have got to say yes, even though you're feeling those things. Because
Yeah.
if you don't, the systemic barriers will work against you. You have got to go there, and you have got to look for sponsors and not just mentors. Mentors are people who help you through the process and who gives you advice when you are encountering issues and you don't know how to proceed. They have the experience, they have the knowledge you can call on, but you need sponsors, which are people who are going to advocate for you, who are going to say, Get, let's give Sonia or give Marjorie this opportunity. And one of the
Mhm.
things I have benefited from is that in my life, I have had more sponsors than mentors.
Mhm.
And that wasn't a deliberate choice. I looked into that. And then when I discovered, wait, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
I now see why I am. I like to call myself a wide achiever, in the sense that I have lots of skills in terms of, you know, whether it's mass training, whether it's change management, all related to people, but they're different. And that's because
Mhm.
I've had great sponsors who have given me opportunities to get involved in projects where I can build the experience to match my academic work. So, you know,
Yeah.
we go and we get trained on certified in change management. We get women are so good at, we are excellent at being certified. There's a point where I say to my life, my job is to learn and not necessarily get certified anymore. And then you need sponsors that help you to get the opportunities. And that's one of the things, when I was here and I had no network and I had nothing and I'm reaching out to people, I thought I need to reach out to potential sponsors. My husband
Mhm.
actually said to me one day, like, because I was lamenting, like, I've always had such great mentors who are leaders, and the leaders I'm encountering here, I'm not sure. And he said, well, you don't need any more. You don't need any more mentors. You can mentor yourself. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah. See, again, that's a female thing. Like,
Yeah,
there's
and
people who
it's
need
sorry,
it.
and isn't that the truth that very often we need to have that more male perspective,
Hmm.
bringing in, and that way of looking at it. So I think what you're saying there is that, and what I am taking away from it, and certainly I think that you mentioned it in your writings,
Hmm.
that the you have to be willing to move beyond that perception you have of yourself where you're thinking that you don't have the skills and the ability to do it, and that does tie back into the bet on yourself, and it
Yeah.
does tie back into shifting that mindset, and
Hmm.
it is what you need to do in order to be successful.
And
So go ahead.
no, you go. Because I was just about to say that that's why the the coaching part comes in, because sometimes people need coaches. You need a
Yeah.
coach to tell to reflect these things to you, because you're so busy doing and you're in the weeds, and you need someone, first of all, who listens to you, because we really very rarely listen to people. And a coach is some person who, as a coach, I am focused on you, I'm listening to you, I am hearing what you say. And you, Marjorie, as a coach, you also know that you listen really hard to people, and then you reflect back to them what they say, and then they say, "Oh, that's brilliant," and you're thinking, "Well, you're brilliant."
Well, yeah, it was you that just said that. So what you said and what you said, and it's like they don't care. Yeah, I always say that people don't see themselves
They
clearly.
don't see themselves accurately. And
Yeah.
that's why a coach, that's why no matter how world class an athlete is, no matter how many Olympic medals they
Mhm.
have, no matter CEOs, they all have coaches, because you
Yeah.
need that person who's independently looking at you and helping you and facilitating. So when you say, how do I bet on myself? So
Mhm.
it's not about just talking affirmations, like I am great, I am good. You don't mean it.
Yeah.
You, people lie to themselves. You don't need. You're just saying the words,
Yeah.
but it's not about just saying the words. It's recognizing, what do I need to do, and what are all the little ways I do it. So sometimes people are so down on themselves, and when I say to them, "Hey, make a list of everything that you did right this week," they will come with a whole long list, and you'll be like, "Well, look at you," and they'll be like, "I didn't know." Until I paid attention to it,
Yeah.
I overlook these things. And that gives you
Absolutely.
that feeling of, yes, I can bet on my potential.
Yeah, and that's part of the, as you're right, that's part of the whole process of coaching people and working with them to help them to see that part of themselves.
Mhm,
Now, I know that your book is divided into two parts, where you talk about the individual and how
mhm.
you develop your own ability to cope
Yeah.
and deal with anxiety that occurs in your workplace. What perhaps is different between that and the individual who's a leader in the organization? Because I could say that I have a team of people that I am working with and they're anxious. Well, what am I supposed to do in order to help those individuals deal with their
Mhm.
anxiety?
Well, if someone tells me that they have a team that is anxious, my response is that you're anxious,
Mm,
because your team is looking to you. And if you look anxious, they will be anxious. And
okay.
so the first thing that I will say is that you have to work on yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Hmm.
You have to do the work to ensure that you know how to process anxiety. You know how to process the stress. You know how to process the uncertainty. You know how to process the fear. And do that away from your team. Your team doesn't need to see you break down. They need to see the result of how you break down and you get back up and go. So hire a coach, help you to process it, help you to figure out how to do it, particularly if you're leading in an organization and change is happening. You can sense it. And that's the primary fear for this book. When you realize, oh my goodness, the way I'm about to do my job is about to change, but I don't know where the change is coming from. I don't know what to do to prepare it. And oftentimes you are leading the change and they're not telling you anything. And so they'll say to you, well, we might lose people or we might not. We don't know. And then you're like, well, what do I tell my team? And so that is something that says you have to process it. You have to work it through, how to deal with that uncertainty and how to process it before you can then help your team through it. And so the
Okay.
first thing is you want empathy to understand. I know the uncertainty. And then you have to help them change their mindset first. Because oftentimes we start with the skill and the behaviors, but we haven't changed their mindset, their approach to
Mhm.
it. These people are terrified they're going to lose their job. And you're thinking, well, we need to take, to learn how to do this new system. You're applying a new system. People are immediately thinking, oh my God, I have no idea what this new system is. I was so confident and comfortable with this, and now I'm going to look like an idiot. And you're thinking, and you're saying, and this is a new system, and you're going to go on training without ignoring the mindset. You have to first deal with people's feelings and say, you are going to feel stupid when you go through this system. That's normal. You're going to
Mm,
feel uncomfortable. That's normal. Don't worry about that. We will work through it. It's going to be a little bit of discomfort, and that is 100% okay. When you're feeling that way, come to me and we will talk it through so that you can then clear your mind to then be open to learning and on learning what as we move forward. And so you can't do that until you do it for yourself. And
mhm.
if your team is scared, you are scared, and you need to work on you. And then you can then help your team to process and go through the uncertainty and the anxiety and the fear that's out there.
Okay. So what happens then after? So let's say I'm leading the team. I
Mhm.
recognize now that I was the problem and I have changed
Not problem.
what
We don't like to label it problem, but I was contributing.
the issue was starting with me because
Yes,
be
that's
the change
perfect.
you want to see. So I was part of the issue that was causing that
Hmm.
feeling amongst my team. I start to work on myself. I'm starting to feel change. I'm starting to think differently. What do I have to keep doing with my team to motivate them, keep them engaged, keep them going forward?
Well, there's certain things that you have to do with, you really have to lean into your leadership now. And I go back to my leadership development training and background. And so you first have to have a vision and have to help people understand where we're going. Life is changing. Where are we going? You may not be able to tell them where we're going for the next year, but you can tell them where we're going for the next 6 months. What's the vision? And then you have to communicate really, really well so that people understand what is my role in this new vision, and in not only what is my role in this division so we can contribute on the team, but you also have to say to people, I understand your individual contribution to the team. So we often focus on the team, but individuals make up the team, and you want them to know, I see your individual contribution. I see you understand, you know what to do, and I recognize and I appreciate it. You really want to then help them learn to deal with change. In every organization in the world today, the first thing they should be having is the training session. And I do it with lots of organizations who understand it. I have a leader who hires me to deal with this team, not because they're an issue, but he doesn't want any issues. So let's be proactive. And every year we get together, and the first thing we do is, how do you deal with change? Train people to understand that and to work through it, the feelings, the uncertainty, and what to do when you feel it. So that you get to a point by the end of the book, you should know that when you start to feel that queasy, uncertain feeling, then you know what to do. You get into listing, what are my hopes? What are my fears? What do I want to accomplish from this? What do I want to learn from this? And then you start to plan so that you can start to develop it. And that's what you would then help your team through. And to do that, you have to know how to lead in an uncertain world. You have to prepare your team for change and let them know your fundamental role in today's world is to change. If you're a cleaner in an organization, your role is to change. It's to embrace and know how to adapt change as you clean. If you're a nurse, it's the same thing. If you're a manager, it's the same thing. You have to know
Mhm.
how to collaborate and build down silos. And so this is all in that section of the book. Here are the key things as a leader that you definitely need to know if you are leading with in uncertainty. And
Okay.
these are some of the things. You have to know how to give people feedback.
Mm.
And one of the key ways that people have to trust you in order to believe you when you're giving them feedback. And
Mm.
you may not have all stars on your team. There are people who give you 80% every day, and there are people who have the capacity to give you 50%. You want every ounce of that 50%.
Yeah.
And that's where leadership comes. You don't want them diverted with fear and uncertainty. You want them energized. You want them to understand this is a process, and we're in this together.
Mm.
And I know how you feel. I always think I'm a great change manager because I hate change.
Okay.
Yeah.
So because of that, you understand what it takes to try to get people through it effectively.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's an interesting way of looking at it because there are lots of people out there that hate change, but they're not necessarily working to ensure that, the change ends and the objective is accomplished. But it's nice
So
that
I can
that's
work with them. I understand where they're coming from. So I meet them where they are and
yeah.
help them and empower them to act to ensure that they move forward.
Okay. Now we are in the last 2 minutes or so that we are in a time of change, if nothing else. If you use no other word to describe the time that we are in now in the world, we are in a time of change. What would be some of your closing comments to our audience, those who joined us, those who may eventually be seeing this as a recording? What would be some of the words of advice that you would leave with people on how they can continue to deal with the changes happening and deal with the anxiety that they have now or that they may be experiencing as they
Mhm.
go on?
Well, I think, as I've laid out in the book, the first and most important thing is your mindset. how you approach and how you look at it is everything. There's a quote in the book from TD Jakes where he says you can change your house, you can change your country, you can change everything, but if you don't change your mindset, then the same thing will keep perpetuating itself over and over again. You will find yourself in the same hole over and over again. So the first important thing is your mindset. You need to harness your anxiety and know how to channel it to get you forward. The second thing would be that you have to build your skill set. So you have to have the skills. This is where the unlearning and learning becomes so important, because you can't feel your way out of this. You
Mm.
have to, act on it. And then the third way is ensure that you are looking where I say you grow, where you look at the behaviors. So there's a mindset, there's the skills, and there's your behaviors. Those are the three things that you need to target in order to be prepared to lead people through such a change. Once you've
Yeah.
got those accomplished, and you utilize all the key steps and sayings and work on yourself and work on it continuously, then you will find that when you feel that queasy feeling, when you feel anxious, you will just say hello, my old friend, welcome.
You get
You're
used
not
to
gonna
it
stop
as
me.
a constant companion and you don't let it derail you anymore.
Yeah.
All right. So, Sonia, where can we find the book if we want to rush out right now and purchase the book, Workplace Anxiety, Refueling and Reengaging?
Well, it's on my website, but you can buy it at Amazon. You can buy it at Barnes and Noble. You can buy it at Apple. All over the place, anywhere it is. If you really want to know, okay, I can't remember the title, just go to soniagartside.com
Okay.
and /book, and it will allow you to like just click the link and go on and buy it.
Okay. All right. And one thing that you've told us is that it is a book that is focused on solution and on action. It's not on fluff. So where
No
else
fluff.
can anyone who wants to get in touch with you, how can they find you? There's the website, but anywhere else, your other social media handles?
Yeah, I'm Sonia Gartside on my Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. So it's Sonia Gartside on most places. On LinkedIn, I'm Sonia Lane Gartside. Easy
Okay.
to find.
All right, so easy to find everywhere. So thank you very much for joining us this evening and for talking with us about anxiety, for helping us to consider what causes anxiety to happen, and definitely for giving specific steps and actions that we can take in order to move forward in spite of the anxiety. Because we're
Right.
not trying to run away from it. We're trying
Yeah.
to get to the point where we can eventually say, with a smile on our lips almost, welcome, old friend. I've
Welcome, old
been
friend.
waiting for you. Yeah.
Yes.
And we move through the discomfort. We don't let it derail us. So thank you very much for joining us this evening. And thank all of you, our audience, our attendees, for joining us and for being a part of the discussion. Thank you very much for your comments as we were going through the process. Please feel free to continue adding your comments. Sonia will definitely be following this post and she will be able to respond to any questions that you may have, or you can reach out to her on any of her either on her website or any of her social media platforms. You've heard where you can get the book. I am more than willing to recommend it, having read it myself. I recognize that it is an excellent source of information in order for us to have specific steps that we can take. So please feel free to go out and look for it. As
Thank
always,
you.
this is an activity that is a part of the LinkedIn Local Barbados series. We bring to you every week individuals who can share with you useful information and tips that can help you to pursue and achieve your own success. If you want more information about us, you can follow our hashtag on LinkedIn, LinkedIn Local Barbados or LinkedIn Local Caribbean. You can go to our website, linkedinlocalcaribbean.com, and you can follow us on Facebook as well. Again, LinkedIn Local Caribbean. So I look forward to seeing you at future sessions. We broadcast every Thursday at 5 p.m. And next week, I will have yet another guest to share with you useful information and tips. So have a good evening and stay safe.